We're live from Port Washington. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining our Board of Education meeting. The first item on the agenda is the flag salute. So if everybody would rise. On my count of three. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, and thank you.
I'm hearing from our community that there's no video. Is that true? No, it looks like it's up.
I'm seeing a whole lot of different pictures on my screen.
It's Dave. He's got to stop sharing his screen.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Mrs. Callahan, if you could please proceed with the roll call.
Certainly. Mrs. Johnson.
I'm here.
Miss Brooks.
Present.
Miss Weisberg.
I'm here.
Miss Bays.
Present.
Miss Gillior.
Here.
Mr. Greenstein.
In my little box.
Mr. Kerpen.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Now going to make a motion for the adoption of the agenda dated May 19th today, 2020. Do I have a second? Mr. Kerpen, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Shall I read?
Yes.
We do the vote. We do the vote.
Yeah.
Miss Johnson.
Aye.
Miss Brooks.
Yes.
Miss Weisberg.
Yes.
Miss Bays.
Yes.
Miss Gillior.
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Yes.
And Mr. Kerpen. You're muted.
I am not muted. Yes, I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Now we're going to move on to my president's opening statement. And I'd like to again thank everyone for joining us. We hope, excuse me 1 second, I just saw that the live chat is open, is that correct? I just wanted to know. Yes?
I think it is. Yes, I think it is.
Okay. Well, let me just do my opening and then we'll see how we're going to use the live chat tonight since it is open. Because usually we do the email questions afterwards due to the size of the group that has been attending the board meetings. In the normal course, I might as well say this now, in the normal course, a school board is not required to take any community comments at all at their general meeting because our meetings, such as these, are business meetings and the public is welcome to come in. And in fact, we invite and appreciate the public's presence, but it is not a requirement that the public be heard. However, it has always been our practice, and this is before the COVID crisis, always been our practice to have community comments both before the meeting gets underway and again at the conclusion of the meeting. We limit those comments to 3 minutes each, but a person may get up, sit down, and get up again for more comments, and we don't cut off any comments unless they're wildly inappropriate. Since the start of the COVID crisis and our transition to virtual meetings, the first meeting we did try to keep the live chat open, and as it turned out, we got pages and pages and pages of comments, questions, chats, a lot of lot of commentary, and we did go through everything and extract questions and respond to them. But it was quite an arduous process, and it took us a long time to actually get responses to those who were actually asking questions. So we had since decided for our large meetings such as this, that we would use emails, the email function, and inviting people, and this is what we did last week, and I believe the week before. We invited the public to email their comments and questions at the conclusion of the meeting. And I know personally, we have endeavored to respond to all of those questions. What I was going to say for tonight is that please do send your questions via email, and the board will promptly answer those questions. Or in the case where we believe an administrator is the more appropriate person to respond, we would direct the question to the appropriate administrator. I see that the chat is open, so I would ask that if you are going, this is to the public. How many people are out there, by the way? I can't see it on my screen, so I don't know how many public.
133, Nora.
Okay, hi, everybody. I would say that if you want to put something in the chat, and time permitting at the end of the meeting, we'll be able to take a couple of questions, but it is going to be probably a long meeting. And any questions that we don't get to through the public comments chat, we will answer your questions either personally through email, or if there are larger questions that can be grouped together, we'll send out a memo responsive to them, because that has happened quite a few times where groups of people have the same question. And there are some issues that have obviously come up since COVID where a lot of people are asking the same questions, and we very much appreciate that they're looking for answers. That said, good evening again, Port Washington. We hope you and your loved ones have stayed safe and healthy since we met last week. The discussion item for tonight is the 2021 budget. Following Ms. Callahan's presentation and the BOE discussion, we will vote on the adoption of this budget. Following last week's meeting, we had 2 live streaming budget meetings where we made some important changes to the working budget. As those who participated in the meetings and many others who have written to us know, and this is important, the esteemed teachers have been restored, and the enrichment program will continue next year, subject to the budget passing. Also, the 7 paraprofessional positions that were to be accessed as of last week have been restored. For those who don't know, the paraprofessionals work with our teachers and students and are highly valued members of the educational team. We're very pleased that we're able to keep every one of them, and that the 3 esteemed positions are being restored as well, provided, of course, that the budget passes, and contingent that our state aid is not reduced any further than we expect. And unfortunately, we still don't have the state runs. They were promised to us on several different times. The most recent was by the end of last week, and we still do not have the runs from the state. On the subject of the budget and the upcoming vote, we've received emails from parents who are asking us to increase the budget so that programming and Port's proud tradition of educational excellence are maintained. This budget preserves our programming and commitment to our traditions, our proud traditions, while keeping the levy, which for those of you who don't know is the overall increase over last year's budget to be paid by the taxpayers, keeping that levy as low as possible. It's a fact that many in our community are suffering from economic loss and uncertainty in an unprecedented way. And as we say frequently, we're all in this crisis together. The budget we're presenting tonight is the result of careful decision-making and weighing of options. We know that there are consequences to every reduction. With few exceptions, If it wasn't for the economic fallout from the COVID-19 crisis, we would not be making any reductions. The March 9th pre-crisis budget included 7 new positions proposed by Dr. Hines and our administrators and fully supported by the board because they are, and they were, important for our students and the growth of the district. These additions are off the table for now, but we continue to look for creative ways to balance our community's passion and our passion for the best education possible for our students with the economic realities and the uncertainty about what next year is going to look like. We have received numerous emails about plans for next year. How September's reopening will look is a decision that will be made on a state level, but I would like to assure you that everyone that we are planning for the anticipated possibilities and will step up that planning after the June 9th vote. Lastly, to every senior and every parent of every senior who is online, we are listening to you and doing everything possible to make your accomplishments recognized and make them recognized as meaningful and memorable. This isn't the senior year that anyone expected, and we share the class of 2020's disappointments. In a few minutes, Dr. Hines will be discussing the most current plans for celebrating our seniors' achievements. I say current because we remain flexible as new information about health and safety regulations are updated by the government, local government, and state government. We are prepared to make changes. And we are very much looking forward to a very meaningful celebration that will include parents and children and be celebrating their success. Thank you for tuning in again. Be safe. And now I'm going to turn over there's no mic, but I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Shields with the enrollment report.
Yes, good evening. Since our meeting that we had 1 week ago, the enrollment report is the same. It was established on April 29th with 5,402 students. Kindergarten enrollment right now is at 343 students. We have a projection of 385 kindergartners for the coming school year. So we'll continue to monitor that between now and the opening of school in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hines.
Thank you, President Johnson, and good evening, Port Washington community. Thank you for joining us this evening. I want to just very briefly talk about 3 incredibly important things. One is, as President Johnson just talked about, is the budget. You're going to hear about the most updated budget, and I want to commend the board on making some really difficult, really just thinking of answers to satisfy both sides, right? So we have the community, the taxpayer, and then of course we have the student, and everything that we're doing is to make sure that the programs are in place and our students have the best education possible, which is incredibly important for this board. And I think they really did an incredible job really working with the budget that you will hear about tonight, as well as Ms. Callahan, who I think has done an incredible job, especially over these past 2 weeks. She has really been burning the midnight oil and then some, trying to figure all of this out to make this happen, not only with the budget itself, but as far as how the community will vote, because that has all changed. I mean, so many different things have changed, but certainly the budget process itself has changed tremendously. The second thing I want to briefly talk about is, and we'll talk about more of this at our Thursday curriculum and instruction meeting, which I believe we'll talk about in a little bit, which will take place on Thursday, I believe at 2:30, is a remote learning plan. And I have spoken to some parents this week, and I'm very thankful for the feedback they have provided. That's one thing with our community, is that the feedback loop is incredibly important. So, and from the survey that we just closed, and we'd be looking at the data as far as the survey is concerned, but also figuring out, and not just figuring out, but really determining what this remote learning plan will look like come September. And as I said at our last board meeting last Tuesday, and I'd like to think somewhat passionately, it will be much different than what is happening right now. And that's not to say what's happening right now is bad. It's just it has to look different. And there are 3 or 4 different edges that will allow that to take place. One is clearly from a professional development standpoint when it comes to our teachers. That is one of the underpinnings of making sure that there is true success with any program that we have. The second is the equity and access issue, and that's something that this board and we have in technology is really, really focusing on for next year. We need to make sure that that is not a variable that gets in the way of making sure the plan that we will have in place is taking place and effective, because it will be robust. The third has to do with the plan itself and the development of that and what it looks like. So there will be a lot of things that will take place over this summer, and certainly will start taking place now to make sure that a well thought out, well designed plan, and thinking about the multiple options that are out there as far as what school will look like, because we still don't know what it'll look like, but we have to have every single area covered, because those areas can talk about split sessions potentially. We don't know yet. So I don't want you walking away thinking we're going to split sessions, but that is something that we have to take into consideration, whether it's a morning and an afternoon session, or students coming in on a staggered schedule and what that looks like. We have to think about all of the types of PPE equipment that would have to be in place, whether it's masks, whether it's thermal scanners, all these different things that we have to consider. Schedules, what they look like, and so all of these things are taken into consideration right now as we plan for next year. For the parents who have been reaching out to me personally and to your principal and to your teachers about the rest of this year, I just want you to know that we hear what you're saying, and we certainly appreciate everything that you are sharing with us. So finally, let me just turn to our seniors. And I say this because, well, for 2 reasons. One is, I mean, clearly parents have been reaching out. And again, we are thankful for all the parents who are not only reaching out, but thinking of ideas that will serve our seniors the way that they should be, the way we should be honoring them after this incredible achievement of graduating from an incredible high school. And so with that, I want our parents to understand, as President Johnson was saying before, and I'm happy to say, is that we are looking at every single potential option that's out there. Now, I know that many of our parents know, and maybe our community knows, that the town of North Hempstead is offering the potential to have a drive-in type of ceremony, so to speak. So that is something that we are looking at. And I just want to be clear about the in-person. As far as that type of graduation, that is incredibly important for all of us. But there's not one person, I don't think, that's listening right now, and or whether it's here virtually or in our community, that wouldn't love to have that in-person experience. It is incredibly important. So we are looking at all of the potential options to see if that can take place. I want to be very clear about that. And so we are turning over every single rock, as President Johnson said. We are looking at all the options that are out there, and we will do everything we can to make that happen. And so I know there was a petition out there, and I certainly appreciate the fact that we have some incredible students who had that petition take place. And I reached out to our students today, and I'm hoping to meet with them before the end of this week. Clearly, it'll be virtual, because that feedback from our students, again, is incredibly important. And for Dr. Pernick and all of our assistant principals, we want to do this right. We want to plan everything accordingly. And to be honest with you, so I saw a video today of some seniors, and of course they were socially distanced, and they were singing and they were dancing. And to be honest with you, I'm watching this and I'm getting emotional watching it, because that's what we want. We want to bring everybody together. That is the common thread. That is what everybody wants. And if we can do it in June, we will do everything we can to make that happen. So more to come on that. And so thank you. Thank you, President Johnson.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hines, and I think you really summed up the sentiments of everybody on the board. We love the graduation every June. It's like one of the highlights of being a board member. I'm not comparing it to being a parent or being a student of, a student or a parent of a graduate that year, although I have done that several times. But we absolutely look forward to the graduation because it's a beautiful tradition that commemorates the hard work, the dedication, and the beginning of something new and exciting for our students. So we are not leaving any stone unturned. Okay, I have here a little bit of something here to do with the, going to make a motion for the approval of the following minutes from the following meetings. March 12th, 2020, March 16th, 2020, March 20th, 2020, March 26th, 2020. I'll just say assume these are in 2020. March 30th, April 20th, April 21st, May 7th, and May 12th. These are all minutes of Board of Education meetings. Do I have a second? Mr. Kerpen, all those in favor? Ms. Callahan, could you do the roll call?
Certainly. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein, Mr. Kerp,
Yeah, yes.
Yes, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. Callahan. Now on to the discussion item of the evening, and that is the 2021 budget. I am going to turn the meeting over to Mrs. Callahan for her budget presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I will start by saying that, and reiterating what Mrs. Johnson said earlier. Apparently, there was some information that hit people's inboxes just this morning relative to a prior Board of Education presentation on the budget, but that material was actually 2 weeks old. And there have been multiple meetings since that time. I do have a brief presentation if the video engineer would please put that up so that everybody could see exactly where we are at this point in the process. Thank you, and we can go right past the front page. Sorry that the print is small on this, but the print is small because the board made an enormous number of cuts. As Ms. Johnson mentioned, these cuts are well beyond what the board had previously considered in the beginning of this process when we were talking about 6.6 new staff being added. This is a series of reductions that have occurred since COVID-19, when we realized the economic realities of the situation in addition to the terrible physical realities of this virus. The first item you see there says contractual codes at all 7 schools. Basically, in my language as a school business official, a contractual code means most of the codes outside of salaries. So it's of course the usual supplies, but it will also include activities that affect students at every level, from homecoming, drama productions, cultural arts events, the Schreiber Times, any of you who have participated in the cold spring harbor trips, the textbooks, copier paper, piano tuning, equipment repair, postage. The list goes on, and is essential for the proper functioning of the school district. Those codes were cut in half, and then they were cut again. We started out also with grand ideas of doing some capital projects in the district, the total replacement of the Salem roof, which has now been reduced to a partial section. We have taken out 2 additional items. One is the resurfacing of the track that's on Campus Drive, and some money that we hold aside for asbestos work if needed during the school year. We've taken money out of the buildings and grounds equipment. We did, after restoring the esteemed teachers and the paraprofessionals, make a difficult decision to access one of 2 individuals who work in our current centralized print shop. And where we see the accessing of 9 permanent subs, the amount is $65,000 rather than a large number, because it is strictly the dollar difference between the cost of these permanent subs who we have guaranteed to come to us every day, versus having to call someone in the morning at 5 o'clock and wake them up on a cold, wet day and ask them to get out of bed to come to work in Port Washington. Dr. Westervelt was able to provide us with $30,000 out of the curriculum code, and cultural arts also reduced activities that they anticipated having through BOCES. We have a vast number of co-curricular and athletic events during the course of the year in a usual school year. And not knowing where that would be in September, we did take money from the supervision of those particular activities. And we have eliminated the transportation allocation for any field trips next year. We have a music teacher who is retiring, and that position at this time will not be replaced, and arrangements will be made for existing staff to pick up as much of those particular activities as is possible. And we have 1 school building, 1 elementary building, where we anticipate the need for 1 fewer elementary section, and therefore a teacher will be accessed from that area. The board in the prior budget established a brand new code for setting aside money for playground equipment to go with our new construction. That is going to be suspended for 1 year. And the final cut was transferring a portion of an individual salary from the general fund budget, which is the tax-related budget, into a special education grant that is not taxpayer funded. If I could go to the next slide. This is what we refer to as option 4. We did have presentations on options 1, 2, and 3, and option 4 built on some of the changes that had been previously presented. This option this evening has a slightly higher budget increase than we have talked about last week. Last week, the budget increase was at 1.21%, but the levy has not changed. And the reason the levy has not changed is because while the board did increase this budget by about $500,000, they have also indicated their willingness to support that extra cost by taking additional money out of the district savings, which we refer to as fund balance. At this point, the district savings of $1,580,000 is being used to offset the taxpayer cost. And I see a typo in this presentation. Of all things, the impact on the average homeowner is $255. I apologize for that. I did not see that earlier. It will be corrected and pulled down from the website, but the average home, as noted by the assessor's office in doing the calculation of a 1.99% tax levy increase, would be $255. What is listed below that is referred to as the allowable tax levy increase based on the governor's formula. In a normal year, with expectations of the economy continuing to boom as it had been 2 months ago, the average homeowner would have seen an increase in this budget of 3.36%, and the allowable levy would have been $4.7 million rather than the 2.8 that is showing on your screen now. If we could go to the next slide, please. This is simply a listing of the surrounding districts and their status, at least as of May 13th. Certain districts had already adopted their budgets, and this shows you their budget increase and their levy increase. And as you can see, Port Washington is right in the center with a 1.99% levy increase. If we could go to the next slide. In the past, any of you who have followed budget presentations, I never even had a discussion with the public regarding contingency. Contingency means if the budget is defeated and there is not a revote, and the governor has not indicated to us that there would be time for a revote, the law says that the levy, the amount charged to the taxpayer, can be no greater than what the levy is this year. If we look at the proposed levy versus the current levy, the difference is $2.8 million. The law also indicates you must remove your transfer to capital, anticipated expenses, as well as equipment. So we know that that equals 1 million, that leaves $1,034,000 from the difference in the levy that would need to be cut should this budget fail. This is a brand new experience for me in my career. I never thought I would say that at this point, but I have never participated in a vote that has been totally by paper ballot, where ballots are being mailed out to all residents who are registered to vote, not homeowners, but anyone who is registered to vote. We have no sense, since this is a unique experience, as to how many folks may or may not vote, and therefore we do need to at least be aware of what contingency could apparently look like should the budget vote not be a positive one. I know I've gone through this quickly, but the board may have some questions. I can certainly talk about the vote itself if the board has any other questions about that as well.
Okay, first up is Mr. Kirpin.
Thank you, President Johnson. I want to commend Ms. Callahan for her yeoman's work over the last few weeks. We have been working round the clock on this. It has been very, very challenging and very painful. And there is no one on this board that wants to cut anything that we think is important or valuable. However, we worked really, really hard to keep the programs that make Port Washington and our schools such an amazing, amazing place to live, including Eastine. We worked really, really hard to keep all of our teachers, and at the same time to put together as responsible a budget as we possibly could, one that had the least amount of pain for community members such as myself and all the other board members. And so I'm very, very grateful to the rest of my board and the rest of our Budget and Facilities Committee, and to Ms. Callahan and the rest of our administrators who have really worked round the clock over the last few weeks in just incredibly challenging, unforeseen circumstances. And this budget is a really, really important one, and certainly a unique one. And it's going to be up to all of us as a community to make sure that we get this budget passed, so that we can avoid the disaster that would be going to a contingency budget. No question. Just wanted to thank you again, Ms. Callahan, and implore the community to work with us on this budget.
Okay, Mr. Greenstein.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. This is my 15th budget, and it's probably my most difficult. It's creating a budget is one of the biggest responsibilities of a Board of Education. And you sort of know you have it right when nobody's really happy and nobody's really upset and everybody's satisfied. I think that shows that we are an effective board and we are an effective deliberative body. All of us have strong opinions, and I have to commend my fellow board members for their passion, their intellect, and their ability to work together and their ability to put up with me to find a solution acceptable to everybody. Dr. Hines and Mrs. Callahan and their teams did an extraordinary job of making sure we were all heard and that all of our thoughts were reflected in the budget. And I can't thank them enough. I'm especially proud of this budget, actually, because not only did we have to shift gears in the middle of the process, but we have had to deal with the economic consequences of the pandemic, as well as a new untried method of voting and uncertainty about what school will even look like next year. Even our state aid figures are subject to change after we have a budget in place. So we did our best to minimize the disruption to the students and preserve staffing levels that are so integral to our success. We also have the ability in the budget to deal with unforeseen circumstances that may arise, since we don't know what next year is going to look like, and I appreciate that we were able to do that. That's not to say next year will be the same as it was before the pandemic, but in adversity, there's opportunity. The board, administration, faculty, and staff are all reflecting on how education should look in Port Washington. It will likely end up looking different than it does now, but it will retain our core values and whole child approach that the community embraces. We don't need Bill Gates to tell us how to imagine the future. That's our responsibility, and we will succeed in doing it. And so I'm proud to vote yes on this budget and hope that the majority of the community will agree with me. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. Ms. Gilliar. Rachel?
Sorry about that. That was very eloquent, Larry, and I agreed with everything that you said as well. I just wanted
I wrote it down.
I wanted to publicly express, because anybody who's been following our budget meetings and our public evening meetings, which is a lot more people than normal, knows that I've expressed significant concerns about going this low with our levy increase. My primary concern was losing staffing that we needed and impacting the programs that the students received. So I wanted to publicly say that I really think this budget is an elegant piece of work. I would never, ever, when we first started discussing the fact that we needed to go for a lower tax levy number than we had planned for, have thought that we could possibly, and by we, I mostly mean Mrs. Callahan, could possibly have come up with a budget that came in at a 1.99 tax levy instead of the 3.36 that we were originally planning for, which is 1.5% almost. It's a huge percentage difference in dollar figures. I would never have imagined that we could create a budget at that number that still maintained the quality of programming as well as this does. And I think it's important to note that part of the reason I think this is elegant is because if you look at the details of some of the cuts that were made, they're cuts that manage to give us some money back for this year when we need it, but not take away anything from the kids. So for example, to gain back those esteem teachers that we and many, many members of the community thought were so important, one of the things that was cut was $50,000 for a playground. If you heard the details when Mrs. Callahan was talking about it a few meetings ago, this is a playground that we think won't actually manage to be built next year. And so it can comfortably be bumped to the following year. It makes sense to bump it to the following year, but it gives us another $50,000 to spend on something else. So I really want to thank everybody in the administration for working so hard on this tirelessly for months and months. And, you know, I've said before, Mrs. Callahan did many iterations of this budget for us, and I really appreciate that work. I am proud of this budget, and at this point, it's just very, very important that everybody who believes in public education supports this budget, and then we move forward from there. I think none of us know exactly what the fall is going to look like yet, but I know our administration is continuing to plan for it as best they can, and we'll figure it out as we go. But please, everybody, support this budget.
Thank you, Rachel. Emily Bays, please, you're next.
Thank you. Okay, I had to unmute. So I'm not going to repeat what Dave and Larry said because I agree wholeheartedly with what they said, but I'm going to just point out that the other aspect of this budget on the last page of the budget, which Mary pointed out, or the presentation that Mary put together, where Mary pointed out what contingency may look like, or that if this budget fails, what contingency would have to be cut. And so for the purpose of the community who may not be aware, the balance to cut after we take out transfer to capital and equipment, which would be detrimental in itself, it would be over $1 million, a little bit over $1 million if we were to be in contingency. And that would be programming that is not mandated by the state, such as guidance counselors, such as librarians, such as kindergarten. And I say that because, you know, a lot of people don't realize that kindergarten is not mandated by the state. So those type of things would be the things, and the programming that we've worked really hard to preserve in this budget, such as STEAM, would also be up again on the table. So as Larry and Dave and everyone has kind of said so far, we've done our best to try to preserve as much of the programming as possible. I think in our mind, this budget is a definite better alternative than contingency. Now, that being said, our job as a board to present the numbers and the facts to the community, and the community then goes about and makes their decision and either supports it or not. So that's what I just wanted to point out. You know, I didn't want to be the naysayer, but I wanted to point out what could happen if we do not adopt, you know, pass this budget. And Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And I think it is very good to point out what contingency would mean, because it's not something that we often talk about. It's just given the situation, it seems to be we're potentially having to look at it more than we have in the past couple of years. Next up is Beth, and then we have Deb.
Thank you, Nora. I too, just like Larry, have been through just so many budget processes, and at this point, this one has been the absolute craziest. We usually do this work for months and months. We did this in 2 weeks. It was strenuous. It was strenuous for our administration. I am really happy to see where it has come, because we really worked hard to look at all of our students and try from one end to the other, from elementary school to high school, from our students needing enrichment to our students needing additional help, to make sure that we were able to keep the programs in place that those students needed consistently. We, I believe, have done that. I do recognize that some of the things that we cut are certainly going to be things our teachers and our students are going to have to deal with next year. We can't say we've cut these things without recognizing that. But that said, I believe that they're going to have the things they need to succeed, particularly the staff. And I think it was really, I can't commend Mrs. Callahan enough for being able to go back and forth with us time and time again to restore all of those positions that we thought we were going to have to cut, and to try and find more creative ways to fix that. I'm particularly pleased that we restored those 7 para positions that we were talking about cutting, because those paraprofessionals are certainly some of the unsung heroes in our district that do an awful lot of behind the scenes work that a lot of people don't see. So I'm glad to see that they're back. I really, really and truly hope everybody recognizes that we have done everything we can to recognize both the needs of our students and the needs of our taxpayers, find the best balance that we possibly could, and put forth a budget that we hope will be supported, because the alternative is really going to be difficult.
Thank you, Beth. Next is Deb, and then Dr. Hines.
Okay, I echo what everybody said, and I had prepared a statement, so some of it may be a duplicate of what's already been said, but it comes from my heart, so I wanted to share it. One of the main responsibilities of a school board member is to put forth a budget that balances a duty of fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers with what is educationally sound and in the best interests of all our students. In the age of COVID-19, this balancing made the budget development process particularly challenging. Dr. Hines presented his first budget proposal to the board and community pre-COVID. Not only was Dr. Hines's first proposed budget very optimistic and well received, but it was within the allowable 3.36% levy. The budget we are putting forth this evening does not look anything like Dr. Hines's initial proposal. Trying to balance the needs of our district's children with the needs of the community in this horrible time, the board decided to forego the 3.36% allowable levy increase and go far below it to 1.99%. We did so not only by making cuts to the existing budget, but also deciding to forego all of Dr. Hines's staffing recommendations. The board made these hard decisions under rapidly changing circumstances with rapidly changing data and information and tremendous uncertainty with respect to our state aid. Fortunately, for the children's sake, we were able to maintain valuable and important programming, and we fought hard for that. I want to publicly thank Dr. Hines, Ms. Callahan, and our administrators for their expertise, diligence, incredible hard work and work ethic, perseverance, collaboration, prompt responses, and resilience over the past month in response to the ever-changing landscape within which we all had to work to get this budget put forth. Thank you also to President Johnson and my fellow board members for your guidance during what has been a most challenging first year on the board for me. Finally, thank you to the community members who attended our meetings and provided important insight and input to help us get to this point. I vote that we adopt this budget. Together, we must keep our schools strong for the children of Port Washington, and I thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Now, Dr. Hines.
Thank you, President Johnson. I'll make this real brief. And I'm glad Emily brought up what can happen if and when, there is a contingency budget, which clearly all of us here hope that doesn't happen. But it is very important for the community to know what that potential reality, can look like and what it would be. And so, yeah, we talk about the fact that, the potential like class size can go up. We talk about everybody loves sports or sports programs. I mean, it's wonderful here. It really is. It's a wonderful opportunity for kids, certainly for parents and community members. Co-curricular. I mean, it's almost inconceivable to think about not having a full day kindergarten potentially. And then there's electives, right? We think about the wonderful electives we have to offer as well. But I think on the positive side, when we look at the budget that it has been prepared, and I agree, everybody talked about a balanced budget, so to speak, right? That takes into account the community and as far as the needs of what that means, but also it is student-centered. And what it does allow, and this is incredibly important for the community to know, for us to have that flexibility when September comes, meaning that if and when we have to purchase certain things, we have the possibility and the availability of funds to do those things. And that will be incredibly important for us as we move forward towards September. Because again, we're not writing off the rest of this year as far as the rest of May and the rest of June. But in the same time that we are closing out this school year, we have to start thinking about, and we are, what September looks like. And we need to have that flexibility, and this budget definitely allows us to have that. And I'm very thankful that the board did what it did a couple of days. Was it yesterday? I mean, all these days are blending together, but at the budget meeting, it definitely allows for that to happen, and that is incredibly important for all of us to know. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Let me check and see if anybody else wants. Okay, nobody else is up here for comments. Are there any other comments regarding the budget at this point? Okay.
I just want to say I will certainly have the presentation pulled down immediately to correct the one typo because it's an essential number. The tax levy on the average household will be $255, not what appears in the presentation. I apologize for that.
Mary, can I just also ask if you could, again, for the purpose of perhaps people who didn't hear earlier, how the ballots are being mailed at home and the process that is going to take place after on June 9th?
Certainly. The first step, and hopefully the item that will be received in homes within the next day or two, is a postcard that informs the community that this year voting is by paper ballot only and that the ballots will be received in your home. You also have the opportunity, and it is noted on the postcard, how individuals can still register to vote by going to the DMV website or to the Board of Elections website to do so online. I would say please try to do that as soon as possible if you are new to the community, because now that we are using, post office, what we refer to sometimes as snail mail, we really want to get these ballots out. Now that we have a number to put on the ballot as to what the actual budget is, the printer will start printing those tomorrow. The ballots will go out. The post office has been very cooperative and helpful in planning this, and there will be 22,000 ballots mailed in English and in Spanish. And the ballots need to be returned either by mail or in person. And when I say in person, we will have a lock box outside of the central office at 100 Campus Drive. If someone wants to drop their ballot in the lockbox, that lockbox will be checked every day by the custodian and emptied between now and June 9th. The law says that once your mail is received on June 9th, you can start to tabulate as of 5 o'clock on that day. And that is the intent of the district. We have locations set up with social distancing because we do need individuals doing that work. It is really unknown how long that will take because it will all depend on the number of folks who do vote. But I would ask everyone to exercise their right to vote. There is a lot at stake for everyone in this. And most importantly, it is your right and your right and your duty to vote. So I urge you all to come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Callahan. Anybody else before we move on to committee reports? Okay. We have actually had a budget and facilities committee meeting. And has it been, I always get this wrong, it's been 2 since the last board meeting. Mr. Kirpin, would you like to make about that?
Sure. I mean, I think we've said quite a bit already on the topic. We did have 2 meetings. I thank once again Ms. Callahan and the board and committee, as well as members of the community that came to those meetings. And we did a lot of the heavy lifting to get the budget to where it is today. So really just thank you to the rest of the committee and the rest of the board and Ms. Callahan once again for their work on that. And we will meet once again. We will meet once more before the end of the year. So stay tuned for an announcement about that date.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mrs. Gilliar, you had mentioned, I think it was you who mentioned before, and if not, please go ahead and elaborate. We are having our first curriculum committee meeting since the beginning of the crisis, and that's this Thursday. So please, if you would.
I'm very excited to be able to give my first curriculum committee update since March. We are indeed having our first curriculum committee meeting. It wasn't me who mentioned it, it was Dr. Hines. But it doesn't matter, it's still happening the same way. So on Thursday, May 21st, 2:30 to 4 p.m., virtually, of course, we will be having our first curriculum committee meeting. The subject is remote learning in Port Washington. We're having this meeting partly because we realize that in the normal course of life, in the non-COVID-19 world, an enormous educational change like the one that the district has gone through would have been discussed publicly much more extensively before it was rolled out. For that matter, it probably would have been discussed a lot more extensively with the staff before it was rolled out. But we were living in emergency times and things needed to move quickly. And everybody worked very hard to try and do what they thought was right and continue to educate students in the face of some adversity. So this is going to be an opportunity to hear in more detail from Dr. Hines and from several members of his administrative staff about the pedagogical underpinnings of the decisions that were made that led to the plan that we have in place now, and also to hear about and discuss the plans that are underway for if we have to continue remote learning in the fall. As you could probably imagine, if you think about it, and also if you're listening to our discussions about some of this stuff, it's a very complicated process. There's technology hardware issues, there's technology software issues, there are platform issues, there's professional development for teachers, as well as the simple implications for children's mental health of basically anything that we roll out. I'll leave it at that. But we do have to take into account children's well-being and their education and educational philosophy. So this is a circumstance that I think has made every school district, but us in particular, have to reimagine education. And This conversation is going to be ongoing over the next couple months, but we really wanted to give the public an opportunity to comment and ask questions. There will be live comments and questions during the meeting. Please bring your questions and your feedback because your experiences will be informing the decisions that are made for the fall. We're looking forward to seeing you all there on Thursday.
Hey, thank you, Rachel. That's it on the committee reports for now. Now we're up to the action items, and I'm going to pull out the highlight of the evening, which is number 10.1.2, and this is under budget and fiscal, and it's a resolution that maybe Mrs. Callahan can read and take the roll call.
Certainly. Resolved that the Board of Education adopt the proposed budget for the 2021 school year in the amount of $163,215,663. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein,
Yes.
and Mr. Kerpen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That resolution is passed, and I thank you. Now what we call the consent agenda, and we've
Sure,
already.
I have a question on one item.
Oh, certainly. Go ahead.
Mary, on the transportation contract with Pierce, there's a certain number of buses listed, and some of that I believe is for special ed students being transferred to other schools. Do we know that those are the numbers we're going to need, or does the contract allow us to increase or decrease those numbers as need be?
I did make sure that the contract allows for us to increase or decrease as needed. Howard and I looked at that very closely.
Thank you. I assumed that. I just wanted to have it verified. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion for the adoption of items 10.1.1. We've already adopted 0.2, so now I'm going to go from 10.1.1 to 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 10.1.3 through 10.4.5. Do I have a second? Mr. Kerpen. All in favor? Mary, please.
Yes. Mrs. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg, Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein,
Yes.
Mr. Kerpen,
Yes.
back to Ms. Weisberg.
Yes, Ms. Callahan.
Thank you.
Okay, I also want to note item 10.4.3 and offer my heartfelt congratulations to Dr. Dave Mioli on his appointment as interim assistant superintendent of curriculum. Congratulations to Meg Sheehan as interim principal at Sousa, and to Danielle Matina as interim assistant principal for Guggenheim and Sousa. As some of you know, our assistant superintendent of curriculum, Dr. Wafa Westerfield, is retiring, and we're going to miss her very much. As far as how we have, because of the situation, we were looking internally and to see how we can utilize the talent that's already within the district to fill that position. And that is how Dr. Mioli has gone from being Sousa principal to his appointment as assistant superintendent. Meg Sheehan was the assistant principal between Guggenheim and Sousa, and now she's going to be the interim principal at Sousa. And Danielle Mattina has gone from being a literacy director, and she will now be the interim assistant principal at Guggenheim and Sousa. Just so you know, this internal moving around is not only saving us money, but it's educationally desirable and a very educationally sound decision. And we're very excited about bringing these professionals up to the new positions where we believe they will do an excellent job. So I want to thank them for stepping up. It's a win-win. So thank you. Okay, we're getting, let me just see here. Okay, we're up to item 12, which is on the agenda, which is the yes, I'm thinking ahead for next year. It's the 2019 to 2020 school calendar, and I'll just read this. Whereas in accordance with executive orders related to the COVID pandemic, the district continued its distance learning program during what had previously been scheduled as school recess periods and extended holiday weekends. And whereas by June 17th, 2020, the district will have exceeded its obligation to provide students with 100 days of instruction. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the 2019 to 2020 academic year will end on June 17th, 2020, and the school calendar previously adopted by the board is hereby amended to reflect that change. Do I make a motion to approve that action? Do I have a second?
I'll second, Nora.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weisberg. All in favor? Oh, do we have to go through? I'm sorry, I'm so used to the old
That's
procedure.
okay.
Sorry, guys.
Ms.
And I
Johnson.
apologize to those listening.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Weisberg,
Yes.
Ms. Bays,
Yes.
Ms. Gilliar,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein, Mr. Kirpin,
Yes.
Mr. Greenstein.
Oh, sorry. Yes, my mute was on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In the anticipation of some questions from the community as to what I just read and what it means, perhaps either Dr. Hines or Dr. Shields could just say a couple of words, because this is actually something that many school districts have had to readjust because of the COVID crisis and the change in their calendars. So I just want to put it in a context for people that have questions.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, President Johnson. I'm gonna actually turn it over to Dr. Shields for him to just comment on this. But you're right, just because of what's happened and because of just teacher contracts across the state and what this entails, every school district has to deal with this in a certain way, where some schools are closing as early as June 12th, ours as late as, if that's even possible, if it sounds like it's late, June 17th. But Dr. Shields can talk further about that.
I would just add that because we needed to remain open according to the governor's directive, that we stayed open through our April vacation, and our contracts that we have with the Teachers Association requires that we don't work beyond 183 school days. So in this case, 183 school days gets us to June 17th. And as you said, Dr. Hines, we have school districts all around us that are having to deal with the exact same issue that we're dealing with. And it's across the entire state. And we have some districts that are closing as early as June 12th to meet the obligation, and some going as late as we are going to the 17th, or for those districts that for some reason were able to have a vacation for April break, they might be going later than we are.
Okay, any board members have any comments or questions about that? Okay, no, thank you, and thank you for that explanation.
I thought Larry had asked to comment.
Oh, I turned off my side chat. Please, Larry, apologize.
I thought you just had it like I was filtered. I just
We heard enough from you tonight.
I just wanted to know that the governor said that we would lose state aid if we took our spring break. The governor closed us in 2-week increments so that we could not plan and figure out how we were going to make these 180 days. The governor basically has set this entire thing up and gave us basically no leeway to work around it. And we're not necessarily happy about it, but we're also not willing to risk a loss in state aid or a additional cost, an extreme additional cost to keep the district open for any more time than we need to. But it really was totally out of our control, and we would have done it differently if we had the option. If he would have just said, "You're closed till June," we would have had our break. We would have continued on like everything else was done, and we would have had our normal ending. So if you have any problems with it, governor.ny.gov.
Thank you very much, Larry, for putting that in the context, and thank you also to both Drs. Hines and Shields for explaining it, because it's not something that we have had to deal with before, and I'm sure that the community had questions about that. Okay, old business. New business.
Nora, can I just say something very quickly? It's not really business, but I just wanted to reiterate something that both you and Dr. Hines touched on earlier, that for whatever reason still seems to be a little bit cloudy. Clearly, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're trying to plan for the rest of the school year, including things like graduation. And the rules are changing every day, right? We're all aware that every day something new comes up, something new comes out. And as those rules are changing, I just want to say, if it wasn't clear, we are prepared to adjust. We are working with our town officials. We are working with the county officials, with our state officials to the degree that we can, to plan for all of the things that everybody is looking for at the end of this year, including our graduation. We all would like to see our children have an opportunity to celebrate this event together in a way that would be meaningful to them. So if it's not clear, I just want to make sure it's clear that we are committed to continuing moving forward with that in every way possible that is safe, that is legal, and that is allowable. And we are all committed. You, I know Miss Johnson is, I know the rest of the board, and I know Dr. Hines is committed, as is Dr. Pernick, to finding a way to do that gives our kids, gives our seniors that meaningful celebration that they want. We will continue to work, and we will give you details as soon as it is possible. And those details may continue to change as the circumstances change. So I just hope everybody can be patient. I understand this is a big deal, and I understand how much anxiety comes with this. I'm living through it myself, so I really totally understand. But I just hope everyone can bear with us and understand that we truly are committed to doing the absolute best that we can to have these kids have that opportunity to come together and celebrate as thoroughly as possible with us, with their families, and with their classmates. So that being said, I hope that that's clear, and I hope that I'm not overstepping when I say I speak for the entire board saying that.
Thank you, Beth, and I agree with what you said. So for me, no, you didn't overstep. You captured my thoughts. At this point, we are going to adjourn the meeting. The next meeting is...
Nora,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you had asked about the comments, but so traditionally we
I was going to
don't.
talk about that.
Yeah, but I think at this point, what needs to be done is, I don't know how, if the comments stay within the record, on the record for when the live stream ends, do the comments go away? Because otherwise, I think Dave could maybe do a brief reading of the questions so that they could be in the record, on the record. We don't answer questions. That's not the process that the board has been, or the policy that the board has adopted, but we do at least read them or hear them. You know,
I thought they were preserved, but
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know. I'm not the tech person here. Dave, somebody tell me like how many comments? Well, I don't have the live stream on for the.
They're not a ton. There are a bunch, and I don't think people were commenting thinking that they were making public comments and questions. So that would be my concern. I can certainly read, if you'd like, President Johnson. I can use my discretion to read those that I feel are most appropriate to what would be considered a typical a public comment or question. But I stand at your discretion. All
right. Well, actually, somebody just was kind enough to send me the comments.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I was just talking to John, our engineer. He copied and pasted them, so we have them on record.
Okay, great. Then we don't. So great. Then we don't have to go through that.
That's perfect. We'll go through them.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
But since I'm unmuted, Nora, I will just say one particular comment that I really enjoyed, which is that you rule, Nora.
Well, wait a second. Why don't we get some more comments? Thank you, Dave. I needed a little levity at the end of today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, I want to thank everybody. What I started to say before is that the next meeting is, I believe it's next Tuesday night, correct? Which is the 26th? Yes. Okay, so
yes, but it's a budget hearing.
Okay, it's a budget hearing, exactly. And, but prior to that, as I hope people took note, we do have that curriculum committee meeting on Thursday, and hope people will sign on for that. So until the next time, I want to thank everybody for participating. I want to thank my fellow board members and the administration for adopting what we believe is a very reasonable and responsible budget, especially
Nora?
Under the circumstances. Yes, Beth.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Deborah just made a point that perhaps we want to mention that there will be meet the candidates for our Board of Ed trustee elections, and that information will be forthcoming.
Yes, that information will be forthcoming. I was about to say that. No, seriously. We are going to, there will be meet the candidates. Actually, there'll be meet the candidates. I think there's 3 sessions that are going to be set up. And in addition, there will be budget meetings organized by the parent council. And those will be done. I'm not sure if like Schreiber and Weber is usually combined. Some of the elementaries may be combined, but they will be live streamed just like these meetings. So they'll be posted on the website. And even if you don't have a child at a particular school, you can sign on to the meeting in a similar way to how you signed on tonight through a link that's provided. So with that said, please keep watch on the Portnet website for all of the things that are going to be happening. And
Nora, the League, Rachel, I think just put it in the chat. The League of Women Voters night is May 28th. That's the Meet the Candidates night. So that's May 28th. Rachel, I don't know if you know a time.
How about the Agate one, if anybody knows?
Agate, I don't think it's been finalized. Rachel, what time?
It's 7 p.m., I believe, on May 28th. And I think, well, the Agate date is tentative, so I think everybody has to wait to be posted. But it should be that week as well, I think.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say before I try to sign off? No, sir. There's a lot of information.
Play us out, President Johnson.
Yes?
I'd just like to play us out when you're ready.
Okay, everybody, thank you again, and speak to you soon. Good night. Be safe.